Thank you for joining us today. I'm Rich Kellner, the founder of PKD. At PKD, we have three major initiatives: increasing live kidney donation, preventing PKD from being passed down to future generations, and helping young adults slow the progression of their PKD. It is in connection with this last initiative that we are releasing this video on PKD Awareness Day to help inform and educate families living with PKD on the dietary and therapeutic choices within their control to improve their outcomes in managing their PKD. If you have been told that there is nothing you can do about your PKD until your kidneys fail, it is simply no longer the case. This is what Jen Hernandez will be speaking about today. Jen is a registered dietitian and a certified specialist in renal nutrition. She has served the kidney community in dialysis centers as well as with the National Kidney Foundation to help spread awareness of kidney disease and strive for prevention with early detection and interventions. Thank you for joining us today, Jen. We look forward to hearing what you have to share.
Thank you so much, Rich. I really appreciate being able to be here and share with you all some nutritional interventions specifically to PKD. So I'm going to dive right in and get started with the first main topic of what I'll be covering today regarding PKD nutrition. The first thing that is incredibly important for people with polycystic kidney disease is sodium. The general guidelines recommend about 2,300 milligrams of sodium per day, and sometimes less than that. So the 2,300 milligrams is a cap that's recommended, and lower is going to be good. Now, in some cases, your doctor or your dietitian might recommend a lower target like 2,000 milligrams, 1,800 or 1,800 milligrams, or maybe even 1,500, 1,500 milligrams. It's going to come from your healthcare provider, but this range of lower sodium is incredibly important for not only the cysts related to polycystic kidney disease, but also blood pressure. And it is very common for PKD patients to have higher blood pressure related to this decline in kidney function. So a lower sodium diet does two things. It helps with keeping your blood pressure controlled, as well as helping prevent further cyst growth. So looking at some of the foods that are highest in sodium, we do know that it's very commonly known that foods like fast foods and restaurants, basically when you go out to eat, these foods that are already prepared for you are typically going to be higher in salt. Now, one of the things you can do when you go out to eat at a restaurant is just ask your server or whomever you're ordering from if they cannot add extra salt to your food. This may or may not be possible depending on the restaurant, but depending on the facility. So it's kind of up to them and where you're at, but it is a possible choice. And you'd be surprised that many places are willing to accommodate something like this because you are the customer, you are their client, and they do want to serve you as best as they can. If you want to share anything about saying you have health concerns or that you have a health goal for a lower sodium diet, that can also give them some incentive as to why you want to have a lower or no added salt to your food. But regardless, it is a good thing to bring up and totally within your control to at least ask and see if that's a possibility. You can also many times look up a restaurant menu ahead of going out. And in many times when I work with clients, we look at the restaurant menus of some of the places they like to go or they commonly go to. And you can look through those menus for, in some cases, there might be like a little heart icon or a little salt shaker icon that could identify a food to be lower in sodium or otherwise often called heart healthy, because this, again, sodium is very important to our cardiovascular health and blood pressure. So you can look ahead, see if there are any identifying marks or indications that they do have lower sodium options available. Many restaurants also include their nutritional information. So that's another thing that you can do ahead of time if you want to do some research and plan ahead. Planning is really, really helpful when it comes to taking care of your kidneys via nutrition. So if you can find nutritional information for any of the restaurants that you like to go to, I would definitely encourage you to do that because it can be very enlightening to see the sodium amount in the different foods and another opportunity for you to look for foods that are going to be lower in sodium based off of the nutritional information they provide. So dining out is going to be very important to following a lower sodium diet. The less frequently you go out to eat, the less sodium you're going to inherently eat, and vice versa. The more you go out to eat, the more sodium is commonly going to be found in your foods. Some other areas that you can look into when it comes to following a lower sodium diet include some of the prepared foods that we get at our grocery stores and that we find just by shopping. The sneakiest ones that I tend to find with clients include foods like breads and rolls. These can be very, very high in sodium. In fact, one slice of bread could be several hundred milligrams of sodium. And when you're using bread to, let's say, make a sandwich, you could have a high sodium sandwich simply from the bread alone that could contain 400, even 500 plus milligrams of sodium. And if we're trying to stick to about 2000 milligrams, 25% coming from just the bread of your sandwich, that can add up and that can really make a big dent in your daily sodium allowance. So when you go grocery shopping, look for breads that are lowest in sodium from what you have available to you. A good target that I like to recommend and I try to aim for myself and my clients is about 100 to 120, 25 milligrams of sodium per slice of bread. Now, it's really important that you read the label and look at the servings because some breads will say one serving is 2 slices or one serving is 1 slice, and then the sodium will correlate with however many slices are per serving. So be sure you read the label and look at the number of slices per bread for that sodium count because it might look like it's high and it might say 200 milligrams of sodium, but that might be for 2 slices. So it would be 100 milligrams for each of those slices of bread. Other bread products like rolls and tortillas especially can also be high in sodium. So think of the bakery area, anything with pre-made breads, they can be a source of high sodium. So label reading in that area can be very, very helpful to continue to follow a lower sodium diet. Some other foods that are also typically high in sodium include canned soups. And we don't always think about these necessarily about feeling or tasting like they're high in salt because they have flavor to them, but they don't really inherently taste that salty. But they can be incredibly high in salt. In fact, many canned soups will have multiple servings, although many people will have a can of soup for a meal. So even though it might say a can of soup has, let's say, 500 milligrams per serving, if you have the 2 or 2.5 servings in that can, you can have 1,000 plus milligrams of sodium from that one food item. So again, thinking about how this adds up into your day from that low sodium diet. Some other foods that are higher in sodium to watch out for include cured meats or deli meats, any kind of processed meat. They can use salt in those. You might find it also in pre-made pizzas or fast food pizzas, of course. Pizza is definitely an opportunity for salt to be in the dough, to be in the sauce, to be in the cheese, and even in some of those toppings like those processed meats. So pizza is another one. And then tacos and burritos. Again, thinking about the tortillas that are used, including any other types of spices and seasonings that they include into the fillings of the tacos. Those can add up quite quickly as well. And if you think about having tacos, it's not just one taco typically that we have for a meal. It could be several tacos. So again, it adds up quite quickly if we're not paying attention to the ingredients and the nutrients that are included in these different components in these different foods. So following a lower sodium diet is very, very helpful. And hopefully looking at some of these ways, some of these specific foods that can really boost up sodium, if we can pay attention to those, that can be very, very helpful in keeping to a lower sodium diet. Now, all of this to be said, I really do want to emphasize that we're not talking about a no sodium diet. We're not talking about zero sodium. Sodium is still very, very important for us, and our body does need this mineral to do functions like our heartbeat and our muscle contractions, for nerves to just to talk and connect with each other. Our body does need sodium. It's just the matter of making sure we don't get too much sodium. That's the important part when it comes to PKD, kidney health, and really overall health and wellness. So hopefully I have covered enough for you in the low sodium aspect. I want to connect that into fluids. Fluids with PKD can be incredibly important too. So drinking enough fluid and staying well hydrated will be very helpful in supporting your kidney health. Now, in some cases, your doctor might prescribe a fluid restriction, and it is absolutely imperative that you follow that fluid restriction. If it is prescribed to you, it is prescribed for a very specific reason. So talk with your doctor, whoever is prescribing a fluid restriction to you, make sure you understand exactly how much you should be drinking up to, and basically the plan with that fluid restriction. How long will it be for? What is going to be monitored? And anything else that might concern, like medications that might concern a fluid restriction for you. But again, something like that that's put in place by your doctor is very important. Otherwise, if you do not have a fluid restriction, it is incredibly important to stay well hydrated with polycystic kidney disease. So drinking several 2 to 3 liters of water and fluids per day can be very helpful for your health. Now, I said water and fluids because it's not just water. Although we do want the primary focus of fluids to be water, we can also include other beverages like juices, even teas and coffees. And I know a lot of people think, well, wait a minute, isn't coffee diuretic? Doesn't it make me go to the bathroom and then it's not going to hydrate me? Well, yes, it can have that effect. However, if you consistently drink 1 to 2 cups of coffee per day, your body is used to that and it will not have a strong diuretic effect. Plus, just because you drink 8 ounces of coffee doesn't mean you're going to urinate 8 ounces of fluid. You're still going to retain a lot of that fluid, even if you do find that coffee has a little bit of a diuretic effect on you, but it's not an equal, you drink this much coffee and you will pee this much. So keep that in mind too. So staying very hydrated, drinking plenty of water throughout the day is incredibly important. And I also want to emphasize drinking it throughout the day and not trying to guzzle a bunch of water at one period of time, or not drinking throughout the day and thinking that downing several cups of water before you go to bed is going to be helpful. For one, you might end up getting up more often at night to use the restroom, and that's not going to be good because sleep is also an important part of our health. So when we're talking about drinking more water, trying to drink smaller sips more frequently throughout the day is a great way to stay hydrated. And your body will continue to use that water and will continue to eliminate the water you don't need. And when you eliminate that water, your body is also using that water as a roadway to eliminate toxins. So it is very, very beneficial for you to stay well hydrated. I usually recommend starting with 1 to 2 cups of water when you wake up because you have gone theoretically all night, 8+ hours without drinking anything, right? So if you were to go an entire day and not drink any water, can you imagine how thirsty you would be? When you wake up, even if you don't feel thirsty, your body is thirsty. Your body is dehydrated and needs water. So setting a big cup of water, I always have my cup right at my bedside. When I wake up in the morning, I have a cup of water right there for me that I can drink as I'm waking up and getting ready for my day. I think it's a great, easy thing to do and can help you start your day being hydrated. So the hydration is a very important factor tying along with finding a good sodium balance and a low sodium diet. Now, another big topic when it comes to polycystic kidney disease is oxalates. So this is something that is really coming up and is a very interesting topic when it comes to managing polycystic kidney disease. Now, if you don't know, oxalates are a natural compound that is found in foods. It's found in fruits, in vegetables, in nuts, and seeds, and it's very, very prevalent in our food. It's also known as oxalic acid, and this is basically something that is being looked at with polycystic kidney disease to see that if it has an effect on cyst growth and PKD progression. Now, this is being currently researched, and more research does need to happen in order to have any guidelines or recommendations if oxalates are in fact something that should be limited or avoided by PKD patients. The first thing to do if you want to discuss oxalates with your healthcare team and find out if it's something that is important to your health is asking your doctor to check your oxalate levels. Because oxalates are in our food and we digest them, it breaks down into our body and is absorbed into our bloodstream. Only about 10 to 15% of the oxalates that we eat actually is absorbed. So it's not as much as we think that comes from food. But anyway, the the oxalates that are broken down and absorbed into the bloodstream, that is where it goes to the kidneys, and the kidneys will filter them out and excrete them through the urine. So if you want to find out what your oxalate status is, you can ask your doctor to check your blood and or urine oxalate levels. So they can run a blood test to look at how much oxalate is in your bloodstream, and they can also have a 24-hour urine collection done, which means you, as the patient, would be responsible to collect your urine for a full 24 hours to measure the amount of oxalate in your urine. And typically at this point, what we as dietitians and healthcare practitioners look for is we do expect there to be some oxalate. Yes, as we mentioned, it's in a lot of food items and it's being processed through the body. But we want to see if it is at a lower or normal range of oxalates in either the blood or the urine, or if it's collecting in higher amounts. If it's collecting in higher amounts, this can be what's known as hyperoxaluria. So too much oxalates, basically. And this is where it could be a potential indication of one, maybe a lower oxalate diet, but two, it could also indicate that there are other nutrients that are missing, and therefore we could focus on those. For example, another type of health condition that is often commonly associated with oxalates are calcium oxalate kidney stones. These are kidney stones that are created from oxalate and calcium. Now, this sounds counterintuitive, but if there's not enough calcium in the body, in the blood, then that's the problem that can create those kidney stones. So even though the calcium is in that name of the kidney stones, it's actually often caused by not having enough calcium to bind and prevent the stones, prevent the oxalate from creating those kidney stones. So calcium is an opportunity that might be available to someone who has higher oxalate levels. And I do like to focus on, if this is the case, trying to incorporate more nutrients into the diet before we look at reducing. So calcium, for example, could be one opportunity that we can look at to help with oxalate management. In some cases, it might lead to a low oxalate diet being helpful in reducing that oxalate load in the body and can be potentially helpful for polycystic kidney disease. Now, as I mentioned in the beginning of this part of my talk, the research about oxalates and PKD is still coming forward, and we're still learning more. And there's not enough research yet for us to definitively say that oxalates will cause PKD progression or that a PKD patient must follow a low oxalate diet. There are a lot of opportunities nutritionally that we can investigate and work on prior to oxalates. So I really do want to emphasize that, because the last thing I want somebody to think is that they need to automatically pull back on oxalates. And the reason about this is, as I mentioned, oxalates being found in so many fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, even whole grains. If there is a concern of oxalates and someone starts removing these foods, think about all of the other nutrients that are also automatically being restricted and removed from your diet. So if you're pulling back on oxalates, you have a higher risk of not getting enough potassium, not getting enough magnesium, not getting enough fiber, many cases not getting enough calories in general from being afraid of including these varieties of food. So I don't like to look at following a low oxalate diet right off the bat before we discuss other areas of opportunity when it comes to polycystic kidney disease. However, talking with your doctor, getting those labs, getting that 24-hour urine collection can provide some good insight and maybe a discussion to see if further investigation related to oxalates would be an appropriate intervention for you. Some of the best places to find oxalate foods, because this is a big topic, the gold standard is Harvard School of Education. They have a food oxalate list. So you can search for Harvard oxalate lists. They actually just updated it in 2023. And a colleague of mine, her name is Melanie. She goes by the kidney dietitian, and she's actually a renal dietitian that focuses on kidney stones. So she has a lot of conversations about oxalates because of those calcium oxalate stones. Melanie also has an oxalate list that is based off of Harvard's and provides other resources. So I did want to mention her resources as well. Now, when it comes to the PKD diet, another big topic is protein. And this is something that I myself talk a lot about in many of my discussions with clients, and we provide a lot of information and resources related to protein and kidney health. Now, with chronic kidney disease, protein has been shown to increase the progression of CKD. What I mean by that is eating a diet higher in protein, particularly animal protein, increases the GFR pressure. It has a hyperfiltration effect, meaning it kind of creates like this false increase in GFR when actually the kidneys are essentially in overdrive trying to take care of all this protein. And over time leads to further CKD progression, which means a decline in the GFR. So a lot of focus that I do for CKD relates to switching more from animal proteins to plant proteins, and in some cases following a lower protein diet. Now, when it comes to polycystic kidney disease, you may have a CKD classification stage as well, based off of your GFR, your glomerular filtration rate. So if your doctor is talking with you about a lower GFR, a lower stage of kidney disease, then being more mindful and being more moderate in protein consumption may be a good opportunity for you. Now, it's not necessarily required to switch to an entirely plant-based or vegan diet. So in these cases, we talk often as dietitians, we talk often about lowering the reliance, the amount of animal protein in the diet, but boosting and increasing the amount of plant proteins. Plant proteins provide a lot of other nutrients as well that are very helpful for overall health, and not just our kidney health, but really things that our body that we need to sustain and to do a lot of the things that our body needs to do. So by focusing on making some switches from steak, chicken, we can look at doing some tofu, doing some tempeh, even beans can be a good source of protein. For example, a half a cup of black beans has 8 grams of protein in it, but it also has fiber, magnesium, potassium, these very important nutrients that are helpful for our kidney health, our heart health, our brains, our muscles, so many things. So we do like to encourage more plant proteins and less animal proteins. Again, you don't have to necessarily remove all animal proteins, but do know that animal proteins have a larger amount of protein per equal weight. So 3 ounces of chicken, for example, which would be just under the palm of your hand, that can be 25-ish grams of protein. And we know in many cases, if we sat down to a meal that had a little tiny portion of chicken, because of portions these days, that it might feel very difficult to limit ourselves to those 3 ounces of animal meat. However, in adding plant proteins, we can increase that volume on our plate and have a larger portion. If you ever have beans, try measuring like a half a cup or a cup of beans to see that volume that you get, the amount of food that you get compared to a couple ounces of chicken. So as an example there, again, you don't have to totally switch away from animal proteins, but including more plant proteins can be incredibly helpful, not only for your kidney health, but your whole entire health. All right, I think I've covered the main topics that I had for today's talk. And if there's any questions, anything else I can elaborate on, I'm more than happy to do that.
Hey, Jen, thank you very much. That was extremely insightful. So we have a couple of questions for you. First off, how can patients find a list of foods where high oxalates are most common?
So this is a great question. And the basically gold standard that we look at is Harvard's oxalate list. So the file is included here. And there's also Melanie Betts, who is the kidney dietitian. She also has a high oxalate food list that will be linked as well.
Terrific. Thank you, Jen. And are there any medical foods or supplements that you also recommend?
There are some really interesting developments in medical foods and supplements related to PKD. There is one brand known as Citra, and they do focus on it's a medical food supplement that is used in tandem with a specific nutrition protocol. So they've had some interesting research, and they're continuing to research the development of this and how it can impact people with PKD. I do want to stress that even though this product can be purchased over the counter without a doctor's prescription or a dietitian's prescription, it is very important to take it under a doctor and or dietitian's guidance to make sure that it does not cause more harm than good, because sometimes supplements can be a little finicky when it comes to our health, especially with medical treatments. Some other supplements that I do often find are helpful for PKD patients can include like a B complex, like a B vitamin complex. Some patients might need iron supplements or even calcium supplements, magnesium supplements. It really depends on a person's diet and what they're already consuming. Because if they are consuming enough of something, taking a supplement isn't necessarily going to be helpful. For example, taking plenty of calcium into the diet is going to be great and would not warrant a calcium supplement, but taking a calcium supplement actually could be more harmful and increase high levels of calcium. So there are several that we do like to look at, but it's always going to be individualized based off of the person and what they're already eating and what their nutrition and even sometimes what their labs are telling us.
Terrific. Thank you, Jen. Hey, and one last question for you. If families are interested in getting more advice and more personalized guidance to their own conditions, how can they seek out that personalized service?
Well, at Plant Powered Kidneys, we do work with clients individually in a one-on-one private service where we can go through and do nutrition assessments and nutrition guidelines. So if you're interested in working with a renal dietitian, you can reach out to us at plantpoweredkidneys.com. There are also other colleagues similar to Plant Powered Kidneys, renal dietitians that do work with polycystic kidney disease patients. If you're interested in other referrals, we're more than happy to connect with you. You can send us a message on our website, or you can reach out to us through Instagram or Facebook, and we can provide other recommendations of dietitian colleagues that also work with people who have polycystic kidney disease.
Terrific. Thank you, Jen.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jen. That was extremely insightful. And thank you all for joining us today. We're going to leave you now with a couple of helpful links if you look to get more information.